deer up there, look. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer before they make their move. And there's his friend, just sticking out from the tree. Isn't it great? Nature at its finest, people. There he is, having a good look. And off they go. Superb. You know, I've come to Danes Dyke today to tell the last part of the story of the night, people. No love and light, just scars in the night. And you realise that you really are baring your soul when you share these kind of traumatic experiences with the world. But I've now gone past the point of whether people believe me or don't believe me. I think it's important to share these things. I think it's important that people know that these beings are real. Hello again. Come back to the same spot to finish off the story of no love and light, just scars in the night from Night People. I said I would, and I'll finish this account off. So you're going to hear the second instalment now. So if you listen to the last one, this is the story of my own abduction experience from 1997. If you didn't listen to it and you've just dropped on us, look on the channel and watch that one first. And obviously this will follow on and it makes more sense. So we'll do this now. So we'd got to the point where I'm sat on the edge of the bed the morning after these beings had been. And these are the words that my wife said when she turned and looked at me sat on the edge of the bed. "Oh my God, Paul, you're not going to believe it." A moment of silence followed her words, where I just sat with my hands in my head, wondering why I felt so tired. "Paul, you need to look at your back. You've got 3 holes in your back. I'm not kidding. You have got 3 holes in your back." For a second or two, my mind was not really registering what she said. Holes in my back. Mary was now up and kneeling behind me on the bed, one hand resting on my left shoulder. I had no idea what she was making all the fuss about, and protested as she began touching the area around my lower back. Let's just go with this. "What are you doing, Mary? I've just woken up. Will you leave me alone?" are the words that I said. "Paul, this is serious. These are real holes. I don't understand it. I'm scared." "Who could have done this to your back? It looks awful. And there is ash, a sort of trail from one to the other. How could this have happened? I'm really worried." And seriously, 1997 people, and it's now 2024. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. Mary jumped off the bed and picked up my clothing from the previous night. I'd worn a white shirt, and she quickly held it up to the light. The concern still hadn't registered at this point. "What are you talking about, Mary? And what are you doing with my shirt?" She was frantic and upset. That's when I reached round and touched my back. I could feel 3 raised areas. My fingers slowly traced around them. Holes. She was right. I had holes in my back, and they were quite big. The tip of my finger touched inside one of them. It was wet and sticky. "I was checking for holes in your shirt. Burn holes," Mary said. "I don't understand this. You never had those marks on your back before you went to bed. You're going to have to go to hospital. I'm frightened, Paul. This could be something serious." I twisted myself around in different positions, trying to see for myself what had made her so upset. In the end, Mary held a small mirror at an angle. They did look nasty, like bullet holes even. And that is not an exaggeration. You guys have seen the picture. They also look very sore, but they were in fact painless. Just strange really, isn't it? You know? Mary was right though. How could it have happened? No one in the house has ever smoked cigarettes, so unless someone had been in the bedroom during the night and burnt 3 perfectly round holes in my back, there was simply no explanation. I've spoken many times about how we try to fit the unexplainable into something we can relate to. And 3 holes had suddenly appeared in my back that were begging for an explanation, and nothing fitted. Mary put the mirror down and picked up the shirt one more time. I'm not sure what she expected to see. It was the second time she'd held it to the light, and there still wasn't a mark on it. I need to say as well that I've set an Olympus recorder about 10 foot away, just in case anything occurs, any noises. We've got a bit of breeze, so we expect a bit of movement in the trees today and rustling of leaves. But anything untoward, we might pick it up. Let's have a look. There wasn't a mark on it. That's where I'd got to. At that moment, I felt just as confused as her. But picking up the shirt to recheck for holes was not going to solve anything. Paul, I'm just looking to see if anyone burnt you last night while we were out. I bit my lip, but said nothing. If anyone had done that to me, I know I would have felt it. And the person who had done it would have been in hospital nursing their own injuries, and I would have been responsible for that. I began replaying the events of the previous night through my head. The people we met, the bars we visited. It all ran through my mind. Something had happened, and it just didn't add up. My mind searched for clues, something that would make it all normal. But this wasn't normal. A cold shiver ran through me. I just had that feeling. Mary's suggestion that someone had burnt me whilst we were out was ridiculous. That scenario simply didn't happen. However, there was one possibility, and those feelings of unease were starting to creep over my skin. It's a strange feeling. It's a strange feeling, and you know, it finished for me, I think, 1997, 98. And you still wonder, even at this age, this stage in my life, if it'll ever happen again. Let's hope it doesn't. That morning I was so confused. We both were. The injuries were far worse than anything before this. And there was a blank space in my head that should have been filled with an answer, or at the very least a clue. Mary was insisting that I visited Bridlington Hospital to have the wounds checked out. I wanted to sit down and think about it for a while before I did anything. Something was wrong. I just could not put a finger on it. Before I got dressed, Mary came back into the bedroom. She was holding a Polaroid Instamatic camera. Some of you reading this will not even know what a Polaroid Instamatic camera is, although they can still be bought today. They're perhaps even making a resurgence now, who can say, you know? Polaroid cameras were once very popular, allowing people to take pictures that developed in seconds after taking them. And that's what she'd got in her hand. She told me to stand in the light and not to move. Then she took one picture of the wounds. At the time, it felt more of an inconvenience than anything else. I never realised how important that picture would be. But now, over 20 years later down the line, I'm so grateful that Mary decided to take the picture. Later that morning at almost 10 a.m, late by my standards, I got dressed and went downstairs. I was standing in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil when there was a knock at the front door. I'm not sure who answered it. Sarah, I think, but that's irrelevant now. I remember her shouting, "Dad, Joe's at the door, he wants to speak with you." Oh, and I forgot to say, he called earlier today. I walked from the kitchen into the hallway and saw our neighbour from the house opposite. A bit unusual to say the least. Joe was a very private man who didn't bother with many people. That was partly due to his past, which I need to say was colourful to say the least. I was probably the only person that he spoke to on the street, and while I would not say we were great friends, we were friends. Joe looked at me, gave me a hard look, and he said, "Can I have a word, Paul?" I can remember this, people. This is not reading from the book. You know, this guy's now passed away. His wife still lives there. In fact, I think I said in a previous short that she actually spoke to me a few days ago about the lights that her and Peter observed in the upper rooms of our home, and it related to this story. Can I have a word, Paul? I realised that whatever he wanted to say in private, so I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "Is everything all right, Joe?" I asked. "I don't normally see you at this time in the morning. You seem a bit anxious." Has something happened? He looked at me and frowned. A hard life of bare-knuckle fighting had shaped his face to look cold and uncaring. But I knew there was a good man behind that hard stare, and I waited for his reply. Joe went on, "Well, I'm not sure how to explain this. I've been a bit worried all night that something was wrong. Are you sure everything's all right?" Joe paused, as if expecting me to say something that would ease his concerns. Then he went on, "I almost got dressed and came over in the early hours. That's how concerned I was." Got a puzzled look on my face at this time, wondering what Joe's going to say. I said nothing about the injuries on my back, but I instinctively knew that whatever Joe was going to tell me had something in connection to those injuries. "So was it you that knocked earlier?" "Sorry, Joe, they never said it was you. You know what kids are like." Yeah, that was me," he continued. "But I'm not talking about when I called at 8:30 this morning. I'm talking about what happened in the early hours of the morning. I almost got dressed and came over. It was just after 3 a.m. when I saw it." "So what, Joe?" "No idea, but there was something happening in your house." "Are you telling me you don't know about it?" And with this, Joe's looking at me, really sort of keen to get my reaction. "You must have seen it. You must have been awake. I was in our front room, and it even lit up our room. Huge flashes of blue light, 3 of them. Just after 3 a.m. this morning. At first I thought it was an electrical fault. That's why I was so worried. I expected the house to go up in flames. I thought something electrical must have blown up." Suddenly, without any warning, the feeling of severe pain came back to me as I stood on the doorstep talking to Joe. I must have winced at the thought because Joe was asking me if I was all right. "Sit down, Bob. Sit down." A recollection of something turning in my back re-entered my mind along with the incredible pain. Then I remembered the lights turning on the wall and the silhouetted outlines of the night people. It all came flooding back. I am certain if Joe had not called that morning, I would never have remembered any of this. His words were just enough to revive the memories. It was them, the night people. They were responsible for the holes in my back. I just stood in silence as Joe described how the light illuminated every window at the front of our house. I could hear him talking, but I wasn't really taking in his words. Joe had just handed me a new box of memories that I will turn over in my mind for the rest of my life. Joe continued, "I even counted them, 10 windows on all 3 floors and every room lit up at the same time. Do you shut your doors at night? Because I don't understand how all those rooms could light up all at once." We heard that, didn't we, mate? So I've got a voice recorder there. I've got a little recorder, microphone there, and I have a microphone here. Let's see whether that's picked that noise up, my little friend. Even the hallways lit up. I got up out of my chair and stood looking over. It must have woken you up, Paul. It was like the house had been hit by lightning. 3 times it happened. And you were telling me no one in the house saw or heard anything. What could I tell him? I shook my head. What he described sounded amazing and at the same time unbelievable. He was right. How could Mary and the girls have slept through such a strange occurrence, or me for that matter? I thought about pulling up my t-shirt and showing him the holes in my back, but in the end I decided against it. It would have started another conversation that I couldn't explain or prove. I'm sure Joe thought I was holding back something, because he kept saying that we must have seen something, we must have heard something. In the end, he walked away shaking his head. I decided to take Mary's advice, and later that day we jumped in the car and drove to the Accident and Emergency Department at Bridlington Hospital. I had no idea what I was going to tell them, or what they would think when they saw the state of my back. I just wanted something to treat the wounds. I don't think I ever had any intention of telling anyone at the hospital, and asking a doctor for an opinion would have been pointless. Just one more thing before we move on, just show you that again. I know we've done that, people, but I'm so pleased that Mary took that picture. It doesn't prove what I'm saying happened. It proves that these wounds were inflicted on my back in 1997, and the medical notes also state that fact. Let's have a look. So I finished off with, it would have been pointless telling a doctor. Their eyes and ears might be open, but their minds are closed to the kind of truth that I have seen and experienced. I'm sure that undeniable truth will eventually arrive, although I am less sure of it being in my lifetime. But one day something will happen to change how the world reacts to people who claim to have had contact. So, there is a little bit more about how I spent time in the hospital, but I don't think I need to go through that and talking to the doctor. And now me and the Bobster are going to continue on with our walk. Come on, Bob, let's go. You've been so good. Bobby checking out the surroundings. He likes to get a good vantage point, don't you, Bob? Hey, are you coming? Come on. Good lad. Come on, let's go. We're doing good, aren't we, Bob? So we've just come to that location just to share that story of the night, people. And I hope you found it interesting. Before we go to the next location, I just saw a little bit of disturbance on the leaves earlier, and I kind of wondered what could have caused it. There you go, look. What could have done that? You know, it's even got a, come here Bob, a depression in it, a little bank. Please bear in mind, I'm not saying it's anything paranormal, I just think it's unusual. What would have done it? We've got all these leaves, and you can't deny that they're everywhere, and we've got this. Come here, you, come here.